Welcome, esteemed gentlemen. Not everything that stands alone is lonely. Sometimes it's just too powerful to need the crowd. Society thrives on labels, hierarchies, and the comforting predictability of human behavior. But then there are sigmas, enigmatic figures who reject the rules of engagement entirely. Neither craving the spotlight like alphas nor following the pack like betas, sigmas walk their own path, leaving everyone else to figure out whether to admire, envy, or fear them. Here's a little fact to set the stage. According to psychologists, individuals with a fiercely independent mindset are often viewed as more competent and attractive. But here's the twist. This same independence can make people deeply uncomfortable. Why? Because sigmas defy the rules everyone else silently agreed to follow. So buckle up as we dive into how the world judges these lone wolves. Spoiler alert, it's a mix of awe, confusion, and wait, are they ignoring me on purpose, or am I just not interesting enough? Number 1, too mysterious to trust. Sigmas often carry an air of mystery that sets them apart, and for many people, this mystery is hard to handle. There's something inherently unsettling about someone who doesn't reveal their hand, who doesn't feel the need to overshare or explain themselves. In a world where transparency is celebrated or demanded, sigmas' quiet reserve can feel like a glaring red flag. People start to wonder, what are they hiding? This suspicion isn't always fair, but it's deeply human. We're conditioned to find comfort in what we understand, and sigmas challenge that comfort by offering very little to dissect. They're the type of people who can walk into a room, say very little, and leave everyone speculating about their motives. Did they say enough to signal interest? Did their silence mean they didn't care? Are they judging us? That silence creates a vacuum, and human nature abhors a vacuum. It fills it with assumptions. Some see sigmas as calculating or even manipulative. Their ability to stay composed under pressure and resist the urge to reveal their thoughts can be misinterpreted as cold or cunning. Others assume they're arrogant, believing their aloofness comes from thinking they're too good for the crowd. And then there are those who just don't trust what they don't understand. To them, sigmas' reluctance to open up isn't confidence. It's a cover-up. The truth is, sigmas aren't playing games. They're simply comfortable keeping parts of themselves private. But that doesn't stop the outside world from treating their silence like a puzzle to solve or a threat to decode. Whether it's envy, insecurity, or simple curiosity driving this reaction, one thing's clear. When people can't figure you out, they often assume the worst. And for sigmas, that's just the price of being a mystery. At number 2, viewed through a lens of insecurity. Sigmas are like walking mirrors, reflecting back the insecurities of those around them. Their independence, calm detachment, and refusal to conform can provoke an uncomfortable kind of self-reflection in others. When faced with a sigma, people may begin to notice the ways they rely on social validation, cling to groupthink, or struggle with their own identity. It's not that sigmas intentionally expose these weaknesses. They simply live in a way that highlights them. For many, this can trigger a defensive reaction. Instead of admiring the sigma's self-reliance or quiet strength, some people project their own insecurities onto them, labeling them as too distant, cold, or arrogant. These judgments often say more about the person making them than the sigma themselves. It's easier to criticize someone who makes you uncomfortable than to confront the reasons why you feel that way. Sigmas also possess a depth and mystery that many wish they had, but don't know how to cultivate. While some people work hard to appear intriguing, sigmas achieve it effortlessly by simply being themselves. This natural authenticity can stir envy in those who feel trapped in performative roles, leading to unfair judgments like, they're just trying to be different, or they think they're better than everyone else. But perhaps the most striking projection is the judgment that sigmas are emotionally unavailable. In reality, they're often just selective about their connections. To someone insecure about their own relationships, this selectivity can feel like rejection, sparking feelings of inadequacy. At its core, the way others judge sigmas through a lens of insecurity is a reflection of human nature. It's not the sigma's fault, they just have a knack for reminding people of the freedom, depth, and individuality they wish they had. Number 3. Misunderstood as aloof or arrogant. Sigmas often walk through life with an air of detachment, which can easily be misinterpreted by those around them. They're not the ones jumping into conversations, dominating group dynamics, or seeking validation through constant interaction. To many, this behavior seems aloof, or worse, arrogant. In a society where being seen, heard, and socially connected is often equated with success, Sigma's refusal to engage in this game is perplexing. People may wonder, why don't they care what others think? Why aren't they trying harder to fit in? This misunderstanding stems from a fundamental difference in priorities. Sigmas don't need external validation to feel secure. They derive their confidence internally, which is a foreign concept to those who rely on social cues to gauge their worth. The result? Many interpret this independence as a form of superiority, assuming Sigmas think they're too good for the rest. The truth is far simpler. Sigmas prefer solitude and minimal interaction because it aligns with who they are, not because they feel superior. They value meaningful connections over surface-level interactions and see no point in pretending otherwise. Unfortunately, this sincerity is often mistaken for snobbery. This misunderstanding can lead to friction in personal and professional relationships. A Sigma might choose to observe in silence during a meeting or skip a social event without explanation, which others interpret as disinterest or disdain. In reality, Sigmas aren't judging, they're just preserving their energy for what truly matters to them. The irony is that Sigmas rarely hold the judgments others think they do. If anything, they're too focused on their own pursuits to spend time critiquing others. But to a world conditioned to seek approval, their silence can be deafening and misunderstood as arrogance. At number 4, romanticized but misjudged. The mystery of a Sigma is like a magnet for projection. Their enigmatic nature and refusal to conform make them alluring to many, and society often romanticizes them as the ultimate archetype of cool. People imagine them as the strong, silent type, someone who possesses an unmatched depth and charm. But this romanticized image rarely holds up under scrutiny. What draws people to Sigmas initially, their independence and self-reliance, can quickly become the very traits that alienate them. Many assume that being with a Sigma means uncovering hidden layers of emotional intimacy or breaking through their stoic exterior. The truth, however, is often more pragmatic. Sigmas value their autonomy above all else, and while they are capable of deep connections, they rarely prioritize someone else's emotional needs over their own stability and freedom. This can lead to disappointment for those who enter a relationship with a Sigma, expecting them to open up in the traditional sense. People may feel neglected, assuming that the Sigma is indifferent or detached. But it's not detachment, it's authenticity. Sigmas won't fake vulnerability or overextend themselves emotionally just to meet someone else's expectations. Even in friendships or professional settings, Sigmas can be misjudged. Their ability to stay calm and composed may be mistaken for indifference. Their preference for meaningful interaction over constant communication may be seen as neglectful. Those who initially admire the Sigma's mystery often struggle to accept that they don't crave or need constant attention. The irony is that Sigmas don't try to be mysterious, they simply are. The world projects its desires onto them, turning them into something they're not. The result is a cycle of fascination, misjudgment, and frustration, all because people can't reconcile their romanticized fantasies with the Sigma's unapologetic reality. Number 5. The unseen puppet masters. There's something about the quiet power of a Sigma that makes people uneasy. They don't assert themselves loudly or visibly, yet their presence and influence are undeniable. This subtle approach to life often leads others to assume that Sigmas are schemers or manipulators, pulling strings from behind the scenes for their own gain. Sigmas are naturally observant, preferring to watch and analyze rather than immediately act. This makes them incredibly perceptive. They can read the room, identify dynamics, and predict outcomes with an uncanny accuracy. To those who value overt leadership or transparency, this quiet competence can feel suspicious. Why aren't they speaking up more? What's their endgame, people wonder? The assumption is that Sigmas must be playing a long game, moving chess pieces while everyone else is busy with checkers. But Sigmas aren't interested in manipulation for its own sake. Their indirect influence comes from their ability to think independently and act strategically, often without others even realizing it. They don't need to control the group to get what they want. They simply align their actions with their goals and let the results speak for themselves. This indirect approach can make others feel unsettled. A Sigma may appear uninvested in a team project, but suddenly deliver results that outperform everyone else's. Or they may offer an insight that changes the course of a conversation, seemingly out of nowhere. These moments of quiet impact make people wonder if Sigmas are working behind the scenes to steer outcomes in their favor. The reality is that Sigmas don't see life as a game of puppets and strings. Their influence isn't calculated. It's a byproduct of their independence and clarity of thought. But to a world that equates power with noise, their silent impact can feel like manipulation even when it's simply mastery. Number 6. Too hard to control or predict. Sigmas operate on their own terms, and this unpredictability can frustrate people who rely on consistency and structure. Unlike individuals who follow societal expectations or group norms, Sigmas act based on their internal logic, a set of principles that aren't immediately obvious to others. This can make their decisions seem sporadic or even whimsical, even though those choices are often deeply thought out. To someone who values predictability, a Sigma's behavior feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. One moment, they might seem fully engaged in a conversation or task, and the next, they've withdrawn completely. They may show up to a social gathering unexpectedly or disappear from group dynamics without warning. This lack of adherence to social norms can be misinterpreted as flakiness or a lack of commitment. But for Sigmas, it's simply about following their priorities and energy levels. The real frustration comes from the fact that Sigmas are nearly impossible to control. Unlike those who crave approval or fear rejection, Sigmas are immune to the subtle manipulations that often govern social behavior. They don't respond to guilt trips, peer pressure, or appeals to authority. This makes them a challenge for those who are used to exerting influence over others, whether in personal relationships, workplaces, or social groups. What truly confounds people is that Sigmas are so comfortable with their unpredictability. They don't feel the need to explain themselves or fit into anyone else's plans, which can come across as rebellious or dismissive. In reality, it's a reflection of their self-reliance. They chart their own course, not to defy others, but because that's how they function best. For those who value control and predictability, this makes Sigmas both frustrating and fascinating. Number 7. Symbols of unattainable freedom. Sigmas embody a level of freedom that most people only dream of, and this can provoke a mix of admiration and resentment. Their independence, self-reliance, and ability to exist outside societal expectations make them seem untouchable. To those who feel trapped by social norms, career obligations, or personal insecurities, Sigmas are walking reminders of what they lack: the courage to live life on their own terms. This unattainable freedom is both inspiring and infuriating. On one hand, people admire Sigmas for their ability to reject societal pressures, whether it's refusing to climb the corporate ladder, stepping away from toxic relationships, or simply not caring about trends and expectations. Sigmas seem to operate in a realm where they answer only to themselves. This autonomy is deeply attractive because it represents what many wish they could achieve, but fear the consequences of pursuing. On the other hand, this same freedom can spark envy and resentment. People who feel confined by their responsibilities or social roles may judge Sigmas harshly, labeling them as selfish or lazy. This judgment often stems from a place of insecurity. It's easier to criticize someone for rejecting the system than to admit you're afraid to do the same. What makes Sigmas particularly unsettling is that their freedom isn't performative. They don't flaunt it or use it to provoke others. It's simply who they are. This quiet confidence challenges those who measure success by external validation, forcing them to confront their own compromises. In doing so, Sigmas unintentionally shine a light on the societal constraints that others are too scared or unwilling to escape. Number 8. perceived as emotionally detached. One of the most common judgments Sigmas face is that they're emotionally detached. Their preference for autonomy and self-containment often comes across as indifference, especially to those who value overt displays of affection and connection. To people who seek emotional closeness, Sigmas' minimalistic approach to relationships can feel cold or even rejecting. Sigmas are not devoid of emotions, but they process and express them differently. They don't feel the need to wear their hearts on their sleeves or seek validation through emotional vulnerability. This can confuse those who interpret emotional openness as the ultimate measure of intimacy. Sigmas prefer depth over display, and their emotional connections are often quieter and more subtle, which can leave others feeling overlooked or unimportant. In personal relationships, this dynamic can create tension. A partner or friend may mistake a Sigma's independence for a lack of interest or care. For example, a Sigma might not check in constantly or engage in small talk, but when they do connect, it's meaningful and intentional. This contrast can leave others feeling unbalanced, wondering if the relationship matters as much to the Sigma as it does to them. Professionally, Sigmas' composed demeanor can be similarly misjudged. Colleagues might see their lack of emotional reaction as uninvested or aloof. But in reality, Sigmas excel at staying level-headed under pressure, choosing to focus on solutions rather than dramatics. The irony is that Sigmas often feel deeply, but they channel their emotions internally rather than outwardly. Their so-called detachment isn't a lack of care. It's a preference for clarity, balance, and authenticity. Unfortunately, the world often mistakes this restraint for indifference, overlooking the strength and intentionality behind it. Number 9. Intriguingly contradictory. Sigmas are walking paradoxes, and it's precisely this duality that keeps people intrigued. They defy easy categorization, blending traits that society often sees as opposites. On one hand, they are introverted and deeply independent, thriving in solitude and resisting the need to seek external validation. On the other, they exude a quiet charisma that draws people in. This combination of detachment and magnetism creates an almost irresistible aura, one that fascinates and frustrates in equal measure. Unlike traditional social archetypes, Sigmas don't conform to expectations. They can lead effortlessly when the situation calls for it, but they're just as content to operate independently. Their self-reliance doesn't come with the aloofness of disinterest. Instead, it's paired with a subtle influence that makes them respected even when they're not trying to command attention. This unpredictability leaves people wondering, are they natural leaders or do they actively avoid leadership? Are they approachable or are they deliberately distant? Sigmas also embody emotional depth without being overtly expressive. They can connect with others on a meaningful level, but don't crave constant interaction. This balance allows them to remain elusive while still forming impactful relationships. It's a combination that feels both inviting and intimidating, making it hard for others to understand where they truly stand. The contradictions within Sigmas force people to reevaluate what they think they know about personality and influence. They challenge the idea that charisma requires extroversion, that detachment means disinterest, or that independence must come at the expense of connection. It's no wonder the world struggles to pin them down. They are a fusion of traits that seem incompatible, yet somehow in the Sigma they coexist seamlessly. Number 10. Rebels without banners. When people think of rebels, they often imagine loud voices, dramatic actions, and a clear stand against authority. But Sigmas rewrite the rulebook on rebellion. They don't shout their defiance from rooftops or wave flags in protest. Instead, they quietly reject societal norms, carving their own path without ever feeling the need to justify their choices. This understated resistance makes them far more enigmatic and to some more dangerous than traditional rebels. Sigmas don't rebel for attention or validation. Their actions aren't driven by a need to disrupt systems for the sake of disruption. Instead, their rebellion is rooted in self-sovereignty. They simply refuse to adhere to rules that don't align with their values, whether it's conforming to societal expectations, following a rigid career path, or adopting conventional ideas about relationships. To the outside world, this quiet defiance can feel like an unsettling form of chaos, one that operates beneath the surface and is hard to predict or control. What makes Sigmas unique as rebels is their ability to fly under the radar. They don't rally others to their cause or seek followers. Instead, they lead by example, showing others that it's possible to live authentically without external validation. This subtle influence often goes unnoticed at first, but over time it becomes clear that their presence has shifted the dynamics of a group or system. To those who value clear allegiances and visible leadership, Sigmas are an enigma. They refuse to pledge loyalty to any one ideology, group, or leader, yet they manage to maintain influence without aligning themselves with anyone. This lack of obvious allegiance can make them seem unpredictable and even threatening to those who thrive on order. But for Sigmas, it's not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about staying true to themselves, no matter what. The most powerful person in the room is often the one who doesn't need to be there. This encapsulates the essence of the Sigma, a figure who thrives in their self-sufficiency, quietly influencing the world without seeking its validation. They don't fit neatly into societal molds, nor do they try to. And that perhaps is their greatest strength. Sigmas challenge our perceptions, forcing us to rethink how we define success, leadership, and connection. They stand as paradoxes, independent yet impactful, detached yet deeply aware, unpredictable yet consistent in their authenticity. The world often judges them harshly, labeling them aloof, enigmatic, or even rebellious. But these judgments are reflections of societal insecurities, a discomfort with those who dare to operate outside the collective framework. What makes Sigmas truly extraordinary is their unwavering commitment to living life on their terms. They remind us that it's possible to reject the noise of the world and still leave an indelible mark. They aren't antisocial, they're selectively social. They aren't emotionless, they simply channel their energy into what truly matters. In a world obsessed with visibility and conformity, Sigmas are a quiet storm. They don't seek to be understood, yet their presence forces others to reflect, adapt, and grow. They are the silent architects of influence, reshaping dynamics without fanfare or demand for recognition. Ultimately, the Sigma is a mirror to the world, reflecting back its struggles, contradictions, and aspirations. And while they may never be fully understood, their impact is undeniable. To encounter a Sigma is to be both challenged and inspired, reminded that true power lies not in what we seek from others, but in what we find within ourselves. If you've enjoyed unraveling the mystery of the Sigma, there's so much more where this came from. Dive deeper into topics that challenge the norm, spark curiosity, and push boundaries. Don't just be a spectator. Join the journey of discovery. Hit that subscribe button now and become part of a community that celebrates depth, independence, and the extraordinary. Let's decode the world together, one compelling story at a time. And hey, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Because here, we don't just talk, we think differently. Ready to explore? Subscribe now and let's redefine the narrative.